Managing your law practice can be challenging. Marketing, time management, attracting clients, and all the things besides the cases that you need to do that aren't billable. Welcome to this edition of the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast. This is where you'll get the information you need from expert guests and host Christopher Anderson, here on Legal Talk Network.
Welcome to the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast helping attorneys achieve more success. We're glad you can listen today on Legal Talk Network. Today's episode is about marketing, and it's been a few episodes since we've left marketing, and I'm excited to come back and have another show talking about an aspect of marketing. And what's interesting, I think, about today's guest is that we're not going to talk so much about how to get more leads. And if you've listened to some of my podcasts, you know some of my feelings around that. While many lawyers think that it is a solution, more leads, more money, good. There are plenty of vendors who that is the extent of their conversation with you, and they will sell more leads as the solution when it's very often really just a way to exacerbate a problem that's going on with the business. I might even take an episode, I've been thinking about this, to talk one-on-one with you about what I call the 5 commandments of marketing. But for right now, let us just suffice to agree that marketing that has bad ROI, that has bad metrics, that doesn't have good return on the number of sales that happen out of the marketing effort, that problem's not going to be fixed with volume. and that's what we're going to be talking about here today with Karin Conroy. The title of our show today is Insight, Intake, Discovery, Making Less Equal More. And as I just mentioned, my guest today is Karin Conroy. And Karin brings great experience from her time as Director of Marketing for Century 21. And since then, she's also brought her MBA and her non-legal, aka real world, marketing experience to benefit law firms. With her business, Conroy Creative Counsel, she's helped more than 200 law firms improve their marketing and continues to bring her mix of technology, design, and business knowledge to bear for law firms, which makes her a great guest. Karin also writes for Lawyerist and Attorney at Work and is sharing her great ideas widely. And we're really grateful to have her on the show to share them with you. Of course, ever so humbly, I am your host, Christopher Anderson. I'm an attorney with a singular passion for helping other lawyers achieve success with their law firm businesses. In the Unbillable Hour, every month, we explore an area important to help you be a more profitable lawyer through growing your revenues, getting back more of your time, and or getting more professional satisfaction from your business. The Unbillable Hour is dedicated to bringing you guests every month to help you learn more about how to make your law firm business work for you instead of the other way around. And before we get started, I do want to say a thank you to our sponsors, Nexa, Solo Practice University, Scorpion, and Law Clerk. Nexa, formerly known as Answer One, is a leading virtual receptionist and answering service provider for law firms. Learn more by giving them a call at 800-267-9371 or online at www.nexa.com. Solo Practice University is a great resource for solos no matter how long you've been practicing. Make sure you check out solopracticeuniversity.com and learn how to run your practice better. Scorpion crushes the standard for law firm online marketing with proven campaign strategies to get attorneys better cases from the internet. Partner with Scorpion to get an award-winning website and ROI-positive marketing programs today. Visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast. Law Clerk, where attorneys go to hire freelance lawyers. Visit lawclerk.legal to learn how to increase your productivity and your profits by working with talented freelance lawyers. And again, today's episode of the Unbillable Hour is Insight, Intake, Discovery, Making Less Equal More. And my guest today is Karin Conroy. She's the founder and creative director of Conroy Creative Counsel. Karin, welcome to the Unbillable Hour.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am glad to have you. And it's a sort of a tradition with the show that my introductions of you are pretty pathetically brief. Because I want to give you the opportunity. Listen to this. I'm trying to make it sound like this is my intention. But I'm just really bad at intros. But so if you don't mind, just take a moment to tell us a little bit more about the background that led you to be doing marketing, creative marketing for law firms?
Well, it's kind of one of those windy road paths that I had a lot of different experiences, but looking back in retrospect, it all kind of makes sense and all the pieces fit together into this strange outcome. So I started in the dawn of the internet, way at this little tiny beach internet cafe where it was still like the era of Netscape, and Napster was cool and not illegal. And I was making websites in HTML and all of that. And so I started there, and it was this very sleepy little beach town, and that kind of went south and shut down. And so that's where a lot of my clients initially started coming from. And then eventually I decided I needed to figure out what I was doing. So went back the first time to post, undergrad, did a design program for about 3 years. And then I went back the second time and got my MBA. So I then started working at Century 21, and I was doing a combination of design and management. But when I got my MBA, it kind of fit all these pieces together, where not only do I look at things from a creative side, and I really have that kind of in my core, but it's also strategy. And for law firms especially, I find that, lawyers don't learn this stuff in law school. They don't learn the kind of things I learned in business school about how to set up a business and what a P&L is, and all of those kind of fancy things about how to crunch the numbers.
No, Karin, you're totally wrong. What they teach us in law school, you haven't understood this, but what they teach us in law school is that you work really, really hard and do great legal work. And at night, the magical law firm marketing and business fairies take care of everything for you.
Exactly. Right. So that's actually kind of the role that I try to come in and be that business fairy to a lot of my clients.
It was true.
Exactly. So my wings are, not super visible all the time, but they're there. And that's kind of where I try to, plop in and say, and oftentimes I'll be working with people who have learned the hard way, that they don't know this stuff. And I'll have talked to them maybe a year before, and they'll kind of look at my proposal and not quite see the value in it. Yeah. And then they're thinking, oh, I can do this. I'm a lawyer. I should be able to, I'm a smart person. I should be able to do this. And then they try to do it and it doesn't go so well. And they start to calculate the number of billable hours that they've just wasted. And all of a sudden, my proposal looks very appealing, and I hear back from them. And then they're kind of an ideal client, because it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I see why I need someone like you who understands all this stuff that I just don't get.
Yeah, and so I totally get that, and it's so true. What I wanted to talk to you today about, because you've really got some great thinking around this, and I think it needs to be heard, is whether they use you or they use someone else to build a great website, and they figure out social media, and they get some leads coming in. So many people focus on the leads, and so few people focus on the actual results to how many of those leads actually become clients. And,
right.
And you wanted to talk about, and we were going to talk about insight, intake, and discovery.
Yep.
So let's first of all, I think it's important, like those are 3 different words, and lawyers, when they hear the word discovery, think something else.
Right.
So let's describe, what are we talking about first of all with insight? What do you mean by insight in this trilogy of important things to be thinking about?
So first, you shouldn't be just throwing out this giant wide net and trying to catch any potential client. So before I even did my MBA, I'll kind of keep relating this to my own business and building my own business. I would get people who would say, hey, I know that you know how to make a website, and I cut hair and I need a website. And I'd be like, yes, I think there's probably some money behind that. Let me do that. I have never done a website for someone who cuts hair, but okay, let's do it. And it was always just a disaster. So first of all, insight is about figuring out who your potential clients are, and then creating some kind of a system around a filter for those inbound leads. So all of your leads should not then make it to the next step. So there should be a filter where you have some kind of a system to ensure that these people are a good fit, and not everyone should be a good fit. So you shouldn't just say, oh my gosh, I have 3,000 hits on my website this month, 3,000 new clients. No.
Right.
Like that's just kind of basic marketing, but there should be a number of filters. It should be, kind of like that funnel, that upside down funnel where, okay, you've got 3,000 hits on your website. That then converts to level 2, which is the number of people you actually reach out to, which converts to level 3, which is the number of people who make it through kind of a good fit on either side filter. Then, keeps filtering down and down and down until maybe 2 to 3% of that traffic actually becomes a client. So Insight should just kind of be that broad system that filters the people through your kind of questionnaire or whatever that system is to make sure that step 1, it's a good fit.
And can that insight even go to the messaging that you're putting out there? Like kind of like letting people know, like,
yep,
we're for you,
100%,
but we're not for you. Yeah,
exactly. So this is another thing that I'll kind of touch on throughout our conversation. You should have some kind of positioning for your brand. And branding is initially something, anytime I talk to law firms, most law firms, there's some very educated, elevated lawyers that I talk to who like talking about it. But for the most part, when I talk about branding, they all kind of tense up and get a little uncomfortable. But basically, you should either be positioned on price, convenience, or quality. So let's hope it's not price, because that's probably going to be a disaster. You don't want to be the Walmart lawyer. So let's set price aside. So you're either going to be convenience or quality. So you're either a lawyer who, let's say you're a personal injury lawyer, who you want to be out there on every billboard, and you want to be the quickest, fastest, easiest thing that someone remembers if they're in an accident. Okay, so that's probably convenient. You're going to approach everything from a position of convenience. You're going to do everything quick. You're going to have your phone number. You're going to have one of those annoying, memorable phone numbers, like 800.
Yeah, it's going to be like, got hurt, call Bert, 1-800-BERT.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything should be about making it convenient and fast. And so your messaging should be convenient and fast. Your filtering system should be, is this someone who is looking for someone who is a convenient lawyer? Or is this someone who wants quality, which is so different?
Yeah.
And everything about quality is going to be, number 1, higher price. Number 2, they appreciate your value. And if they don't, then shove them over to someone who is that price-based or convenience-based lawyer. So you should probably have some of those people in your Rolodex. Let's hope it's not an actual Rolodex, but in your phone that are your referrals that are going to be, you're going to send those people over to. So, okay, you get a person who comes in and they're price-based. Oh, here's my price-based referral person who I'm going to send you over to. And you're going to do that in a very nice, professional and friendly and systematic way. Okay, I've got this templated email. Here you go. This is my buddy. We have some kind of a partnership relationship. They know I'm going to send you this referral. We're not a good fit, but here you go. I've already got this all set up. But let's say your quality, because this is the one that I like to speak to the most, because this is what I am, then all of your branding, all of your insight, all 3 of these things we're going to talk about, insight, intake, discovery, it should all be around quality. So you should have a filter that if someone is out of the gate asking you about pricing or how fast and convenient it is, those should be at least red flags. It shouldn't be that your clients should care a little bit about price, of course, but it shouldn't be their driving factor.
Sure, everybody does.
Exactly. So I know that was a mouthful.
No, that was fantastic, because I think to me, and we're going to talk about intake, these other 2 things are really important, but this is the main one, because I think what I see, and listen, in this business, I'm out there helping a lot of law firms, and I surf, and I look at what a lot of law firms are doing in their marketing, and with being exaggerating, but not that much. So many law firms are out there going like, hey, you know what? We help people with stuff. So come see us, because we that's what we do. And then they're surprised when, because you said 2 to 3% of leads become clients, which that would be awesome. I think that'd be a great rate. But they're just shocked and dismayed when they're at 0.2%. And then their phones, they're spending gobs and gobs of money answering phone calls and speaking to people that they shouldn't even be speaking to.
Right.
But so let's take it to the next step. So that's insight, which I thought is brilliant.
Yeah.
What's intake? What's this next step of intake?
Okay, so if you picture that upside down funnel, these are people who have made it through that insight. So in some way, they may have red flags, and that's okay. But in some way, so for myself, I have a very rudimentary scorecard, and I've got it so drilled into my head. It's basically that, that I kind of evaluate people on 3 or 4 things. I can glance at like their initial contact and score it in my head. It's not a complicated thing, but for me, I score it on how much they talk about their budget, basically what their kind of practice area is. And I just kind of look at what they're talking about and whether I see value for me and my services. So for myself versus any firm, this is going to be a different kind of scorecard, but it should be very basic. You should be able to look at any kind of a initial contact from a client or potential client and just score it and say, okay, this may be a 6 out of 10, or this may be a 2, which is a no, or, and have kind of some sort of breaking point. So if it's, under 5 or whatever it may be, have a breaking point. But let's say it's a 6 or a 7. So yeah, there may be a little bit of red flags. They're talking somewhat about budget, but that's all right. So it somehow has made it through that insight. You've scored it. It's okay. It's okay enough to go to the next level, because ideally you're going to get them to the next level and you have to do some convincing to them. You're going to have a conversation and really figure out if it is an 8 or 9 or if it really is a 2 or 3.
You mentioned, that whether or not that'll work for you. How do you feel about, like, as part of that intake, also evaluating whether you can really bring value to the client?
Yeah, and that's the other piece that I didn't mention is whether I think it's going to be a successful project. So if I look at what they're asking and they're needing a website or whatever it is they need yesterday, or if they left a firm or were fired or something last week and they had no knowledge of it, or they planned to leave a firm and they didn't even think about a website until 2 months after the fact, and they are just in a panic, that's probably not a project I'm going to take, because they're in such a hurry. They are going to cut all corners. They don't see my value. They just, want it too fast for it to be good. So yes, absolutely. Whether you think it's going to be successful, and that doesn't necessarily mean a successful case outcome, but whether you and the client agree on the kind of goals for whatever that case or project or whatever is.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So that's insight and intake. What's discovery?
So intake also, just to one step backwards.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Please,
For me, that includes, so I set up an initial call. I go through, it's also kind of an interview for me with that client to make sure that they're a good fit. But then it's also, at one point in the intake, they have now signed up and we have an agreement and they are a new client. And so that will include a welcome packet that took me forever to put together. And I do kind of refine it from time to time, but it includes some standard things that I think are standard for any kind of business, like just an understanding of expectations, how they can get in touch with you, what they've signed up for and agreed to. You'd be surprised the number of lawyers that I work with that didn't even read through the contract. So, little things like that just kind of reiterate the important little bits of, what their role is and how it's all going to work. And so I have checklists for all of that stuff. So anytime I get a new project, I go through a list of checklists. There was a really great book a few years ago about how surgeons and everyone, they really need these checklists to ensure that everything is getting done correctly, because after the human brain hits like 3 or 4 things on a list, it's very, questionable about how many of those you can actually remember. So I have checklists for everything to make sure that myself and my team is getting everything done and doing what we were promising. And so that's kind of intake. Then it goes into discovery.
Okay. But so this intake process is involved and really helpful at narrowing down the match between you and the potential client.
Exactly. But also kind of setting the stage for the whole project. So they understand, especially in my case, a lot of my clients haven't done a website before, or if they have, it was, painful. And each firm does things differently. So this is oftentimes not something that they're familiar with. And that's, also the case for a lot of people who are initially hiring a lawyer. They haven't necessarily done that before, maybe one other time. And so they really don't know what to expect. And so it's really important right off the bat to be open and clear about all the steps, all the levels of communication, what's going to happen next. Here's what I need from you. Here's how the payment is going to happen. All of those really important things.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking with Karin Conroy, and the title of the show is Insight, Intake, and Discovery. And we've gone into good detail on what insight and intake are and how important they are in matching through the marketing process and the insight and then intake once they become a lead, how to match them with the business and match the business with their needs. We're going to take a break right here. And when we come back, we're going to learn about what is discovery. And then we'll also talk about how to measure all this stuff and how to actually put it to use. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. Law Clerk is where attorneys go to hire freelance lawyers. Whether you need a research memo or a complicated appellate brief, our network of freelance lawyers have every level of experience and expertise. Sign up is free, and there are no monthly fees. Only pay the flat fee price you set. Use rebate code UNBILLABLE to get a $100 Amazon gift card when you complete your next project. Learn more at lawclerk.legal. If you're missing calls, appointments, and potential clients, it's time to work with Nexa Professional. More than just an answering service, Nexa's virtual receptionists are available 24/7 to schedule appointments, qualify leads, respond to emails, integrate with your firm's software, and much more. Nexa ensures your clients have the experience they deserve. Give them a call at 800-267-9371 or visit them at nexa.com/podcast for a special offer. And welcome back to the Unbillable Hour. We're talking with Karin Conroy, and we've been talking about insight, intake, and discovery. Really important steps to kind of juice the investment that you make in your marketing to make sure you're reaching the right people and then that you're matching them with your business. And we gave great definitions of insight and intake, and now Karin was going to talk to us about what this discovery portion is. So Karin, what's this discovery bit?
So it's not so different from probably how a law firm will do the discovery of a case. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly. But my guess is that it's, basically a fancy word for research. And so for myself, when I have a new client, it's about getting all the necessary information about that client and about their potential clients and who they're looking to work with.
So they've signed up now. They're a current client.
Right.
Okay.
And now I'm figuring out what we're going to do, basically. So now I'm figuring out kind of what the approach is going to be for that project, who their clients are, what the messaging is going to be, what kind of brand they are looking to represent, what kind of colors, fonts, styles. But oftentimes the colors, font, style, and visuals are the thing that it gets distilled down to. And there's so much more behind all of that, that a lot of firms start with that and it falls flat because they don't really understand what goes to make that effective and how to tie that in with your messaging and how to do things that aren't cliche and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So you put this whole scope together. So, and then you really know what you're doing with the client. And I imagine when we're talking about the law firm marketing, these all fit in directly. When the law firm finally gets the client, it's all about making sure that they get in a systematic, methodical way,
right,
what the scope of the representation is going to be.
Exactly. And so for myself, if we go back to that idea of the brand's positioning, whether it's price, convenience, or quality, and I'm always coming from a quality position, so I travel quite a bit with my family, and I really enjoy very high-end hotels. And so I come back to that in my head a lot, because I think kind of visually. So I need to have those visuals of if I was walking into a high-end hotel, they do all these little tiny things that make them high-end. And they're things that they're thinking of before you would ever think of it. A lot of things that you would never even think to do. If they're greeting you at the door with a cool washcloth, if it's a humid temperature or something like that, I would never greet someone at my front door with a cool washcloth, but it's such a nice little idea. So it's little things like that if you are looking to convey that kind of a brand, you need to be thinking way ahead of your client, that all the little tiny things that are going to put you way over the top and make you super memorable and make it different. So not just, the normal, typical, obvious responses, but high-end quality things.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got this vision of, this criminal defendant client comes in. You're like, you look kind of dirty. Would you mind just wiping your hands a little bit before you
Here's a bottle of hand sanitizer. Please don't touch anything.
No. I get it. So let's put this all to real work.
Okay.
So we talked about this, and I think anybody listening at this point kind of gets that these are really great ideas. So now if you don't mind, can you share how you teach law firms to make this actionable, make it measurable? What kind of data can they use in this insight and intake part of the process in particular that can help them make decisions?
Well, this is going to be a vague answer because for every firm, it's going to be different. So, that's the short answer. But the first thing is to figure out what your key performance indicators, those KPI things are. And if you've never heard of that, it's just basically a number that you assign to some kind of a goal. So for some of the firms I work with, the first thing they'll tell me is, I have no interest in SEO. I do not care about Google. 98% of my clients come in through referrals. And so what I care about is my reputation. I need some kind of a presence online that represents my experience. And when people go to look me up, they can feel that I totally understand their problem, but that I also have the experience and the knowledge to help them solve their issue. So their goal and result and their measurable kind of result is going to be a lot different than a personal injury attorney who does care a lot about SEO and is going to be looking at all those numbers. So a client who looks at their reputation and that kind of stuff is going to be someone who looks at the number of people who mention their website, who mention that, oh, I looked at your website and it was really impressive. And maybe I looked at your bio and I noticed XYZ, and that is the reason that I decided to call you. Or there was some compelling piece of messaging that I noticed, and I'm going to mention now, that is the reason that I actually converted to actually pick up the phone or send you an email or, do that very simple conversion. So
right. So how do we gather this data? How do we get this data in?
Right.
How do we find that out?
So for that type of a firm, it's going to be a pretty simple kind of sales funnel and way of measuring that. So typically the life cycle of that client is going to be, they got your name from someone else or they heard your name somewhere, and then they looked you up online, and then in some way, your website converted them and reinforced what they had already heard enough to make the conversion where you either picked up the phone or made that email. So in that kind of course of that client, those are the behaviors that you want to reinforce. So you want to make sure that your phone number is visible, all of that stuff. So number one, you're going to count the number of clicks on your phone number or on your email address. So that's a measurable number. But also, you're going to have some kind of an intake process in your law firm that makes sure that you ask these people, okay, how did you hear about us? And then you're going to keep track of that. And it can be something as simple as whoever's doing your intake, making sure that they're keeping track of it in some way, or even if you are just keeping track of it as you take those calls, depending on who's doing that. So that type of firm is going to be pretty simple, pretty basic. And you don't need to make it overly complicated, but you just need to know, okay, most of them are coming in from X referral source. So maybe there's one particular referral source that's, doing 80% of your referring. And so you need to make sure to nurture that relationship, make sure you send them a nice, little present every so often, keep in touch with them and, keep that, a happy relationship. Or maybe not, maybe there's 5 or 6, but that's going to be the question that you're really driving at. And you only have to go back a couple steps to figure out where the beginning of that funnel starts.
Perfect. We're going to take another break here and hear from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to ask Karin about what software we might use to help track this information, because once we get going, there's a lot of information that we've talked about. Probably be helpful to have something that can help us track that, and then what some red flags, go, no go, what kind of information might give us go, no go decisions. But first, we'll hear from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and ask Karin those questions.
Feel like your marketing efforts aren't getting you the high-value cases your firm deserves? For over 15 years, Scorpion has helped thousands of law firms just like yours attract new cases and grow their practices. As a Google Premier Partner and winner of Google's Platform Innovator Award, Scorpion has the right resources and technology to aggressively market your law firm and generate better cases from the internet. For more information, visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast today. Ready to create and build your own solo or small firm practice? Need a nuts and bolts education on the 360-degree experience of starting a business? There's only one online destination dedicated to helping you achieve your goals: Solo Practice University. The only online educational and professional networking community dedicated to lawyers and law students who want to go into practice for themselves. More than 1,000 classes, 58 faculty and mentors. What are you waiting for? Check out solopracticeuniversity.com today.
And welcome back. We're speaking with Karin Conroy, and we've been talking about insight, intake, and discovery. And we've just got done talking about a lot of information to look at, the data to be able to make decisions about our marketing and about whether or not to take certain clients. And Karin, before we went to break, I said I was just going to ask you about what you recommend to your clients regarding software to use to kind of keep track of this stuff. The market is so full of different, there's Clio Grow, there's Insightly and Contactually, and there's HubSpot and ActiveCampaign and Salesforce and Keep, which used to be Infusionsoft. What do you recommend?
So I start all of these conversations whenever I often will talk to someone who's starting a new firm and setting all this stuff up, and they have this question. And I suffer from this issue myself of shiny object syndrome. I see all of these new software, and I just waste so much time looking into this. So the short answer is keep it simple. Do whatever you can do to keep it the most simple that you possibly can for the best cost. So for myself, I have tried everything under the sun. I do a lot of Google Docs, Google Drive, do a lot of shared documents through Google. But then I also have found kind of a CRM that fits within Gmail. And that way I can kind of do things right inside of my inbox. But the short answer is to do whatever makes the most sense for your firm. If you need to integrate it with a number of people and team members in your firm, that's different than what would work for me. So for email, I personally like ActiveCampaign quite a bit, but MailChimp is not bad. MailChimp gets better all the time, and it's free. So ActiveCampaign, great if you're doing something more complicated, but it's more expensive. MailChimp is perfect for getting started and being free. But the one thing I do use quite a bit that I think is critical is Boomerang and canned responses in Gmail. So I have a whole bunch of systems where I just automatically have certain responses. So for example, in that insight, if you've got people filtered out and it's not a good fit, you should have a canned response for that. So you don't have to sit and think and redraft an email every single time you need to, refer them over to somebody else. For each step in your process, you should have a whole script of responses, especially as they're moving through and they're getting to be a potential client. You should have things where you don't have to, rethink your messaging every single day.
Yeah, no, that makes a whole lot of sense. We are almost to the top of the show, but Karin, I didn't want to let you go before because I've read some stuff you've written about this, and I know you have some big thinking around this, but I wanted to ask you about women in design, in marketing and in design in general, and whether or not that's an advantage. And since you've spoken about it before, I thought I'd love to end the show with your comments and thoughts about women in design.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stigma, especially around designers, that, there are these kind of artists and kind of, foo-foo and whatever. But I think there is a very unique perspective that women are able to tackle in design that is is unique. And so whether it's better or worse or whatever is not necessarily what I'm saying, but
Sure.
Considering marketing in general, the basic outcome and goal in marketing is to be memorable. So you're trying to be different. You're trying to set yourself apart. In most of the cases of the clients I work with, they're in big geographic areas where the competition is fierce. And so if they just put up a site and it looks like every other site and it has a downtown nighttime skyline picture of, X city, and it just says law firm, X city, they are not setting themselves apart. They're doing the opposite of every goal in marketing. So considering the benefits of women and their ability to look at those different approaches and figure out how to set yourself apart is, something to consider. And, in my experience, it's been a superior advantage over the kind of general cliche responses that most of the men that I've worked with come up with.
Yeah. Well, I think it's certainly an aspect, and people can check out your website at conroycreativecounsel.com and take a look at what you're talking about. But I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I've got I just want to talk to you another 20 minutes about that and other stuff, or another 20 hours.
Right.
But we're out of time. So that wraps up this edition of the Unbillable Hour, the Law Business Advisory Podcast. And our guest today, in case you've forgotten, has been Karin Conroy. She's the founder and creative director of Conroy Creative Counsel. I already mentioned they can find out more about you at conroycreativecounsel.com. If they want to follow up with the name of that software you're talking about or anything else, are there any other ways they can get you on Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn? How would you like people to contact you?
Yeah, any of the above. Twitter is just Karin Conroy, at Karin Conroy. LinkedIn is always a great way. I connect through a lot of people through LinkedIn. You can just look for my name.
Fantastic. And that's KarinConroy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And this, of course, is Christopher Anderson, and I look forward to seeing you next month with another great guest as we learn more about topics that help us build the law firm business that works for you. Remember, you can subscribe to all the editions of this podcast at LegalTalkNetwork.com or on iTunes. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. Thanks for listening to the Unbillable Hour, the Law Practice Advisory Podcast. Join us again for the next edition, right here with Legal Talk Network.